The morning after I gave birth, my mother-in-law threw my bags onto the gravel driveway and kicked me out. "We're done taking care of a penniless leech," she sneered, as my husband stood behind her in silent agreement. I stood in the cold morning air holding my newborn baby, but before I could take a step, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. My mother stepped out with a prominent attorney and a thick leather folder, and they never saw what was coming. My name is Lisa Webb. To understand how an eviction on a sunlit driveway in Paradise Valley, Arizona, unraveled a multi-million-dollar corporate fraud scheme, you have to look into the arrogant, status-obsessed world of the Montgomery family. For 4 years, my mother-in-law, Vivian Montgomery, and my husband, Derek Montgomery, treated me as an unwelcome intruder, a woman they believed was completely broke, defenseless, and desperate for their approval. Derek's family owned Montgomery Health Logistics, a mid-tier medical device distribution firm headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. Vivian was a high-society matriarch who measured human dignity strictly by bank balances, designer labels, and country club memberships. When Derek brought me home 4 years ago, Vivian made no effort to hide her contempt. At the time, I was working as a quiet clinical coordinator at a regional hospital in Scottsdale, living modestly in a small rented apartment. Vivian immediately branded me a gold digger who was leeching off her son's corporate fortune. She made it her daily mission to belittle me, mocking my simple wardrobe, making passive-aggressive comments about my background, and reminding me at every family dinner that I was fortunate Derek had lowered his standards to marry me. Derek, a weak, spineless man who was entirely dependent on his mother's financial backing, always nodded along, enforcing Vivian's cruel behavior. What Vivian and Derek did not know was that my modest lifestyle was a deliberate personal choice, not a sign of poverty. My mother, Catherine Webb, is the founder and majority owner of Webb Capital Real Estate Trust, a $500 million commercial asset empire controlling major medical plazas, luxury residential towers, and corporate complexes across the Southwest. 5 years ago, after my father passed away, my mother and I had a temporary falling out over my desire to establish an independent career in healthcare management without relying on family wealth. I moved to Scottsdale, took a job under my maiden name, and built a life on my own terms. When I married Derek 3 years ago, I intentionally chose not to disclose my mother's vast fortune. I wanted to believe that Derek loved me for who I was, not for my family's money. But within 6 months of our marriage, Derek's true nature began to surface. Montgomery Health Logistics was secretly drowning in debt due to Derek's reckless investments in Vivian's lavish personal spending habits. They lived in an 8,000-square-foot luxury estate in Paradise Valley, driving imported sports cars and hosting expensive gala parties, while their business was collapsing under millions of dollars in unpaid commercial loans. When I became pregnant with my son Noah, Derek and Vivian's behavior shifted from passive-aggressive belittling to calculated financial hostility. They viewed my impending motherhood not as a joyful miracle, but as an inconvenient liability that threatened their remaining cash reserves and elevated their paranoia regarding inheritance. 7 months into my pregnancy, Derek brought home a stack of corporate legal documents, pressuring me to sign them under the guise of routine spousal consent forms for a bank line of credit. I was a trained healthcare administrator with extensive experience in legal documentation, so instead of signing blindly, I took the files to my office and conducted a thorough background audit on Montgomery Health Logistics. What I uncovered was appalling. Derek had already forged my signature on a $4.5 million high-interest commercial loan backed by a fraudulent personal guarantee in my name. Furthermore, Vivian had drafted a secret legal petition through a corrupt family attorney, intending to claim that I was mentally unstable and financially unfit to raise my baby, planning to strip me of parental rights the moment I gave birth so Derek could claim full single-parent trust distributions from a regional family estate. They weren't just exploiting me, they were actively plotting to steal my child and saddle me with millions of dollars in fraudulent corporate debt. Sitting in my office that night, staring at the forged loan vouchers, I felt no sadness or fear. The romantic fog vanished entirely, replaced with an ice-cold resolve. I picked up my phone and made a call I hadn't made in years. "Mom," I said softly when Catherine answered. "I need your help." The moment Catherine heard my voice and learnt what Derek and Vivian were doing, the distance between us evaporated in an instant. Catherine was a formidable businesswoman who knew every legal and financial maneuver in the Southwest. Within 24 hours, Catherine's senior corporate attorney, Nathaniel Blake, to initiate a confidential multi-layered forensic investigation into the Montgomery family's assets and business dealings. Over the next 2 months, while I pretended to be a naive, stressed pregnant wife, quietly enduring Vivian's daily insults, Catherine and Nathaniel Blake uncovered astonishing leverage. First, the 8,000 square foot Paradise Valley estate where Vivian and Derek lived wasn't owned by them outright. It was held under a complex commercial lease to own agreement with a regional property holding group. 3 months prior, Catherine's asset trust, Webb Capital, had quietly purchased that exact holding group, becoming the primary landlord and mortgage holder of the Paradise Valley estate. Second, Nathaniel Blake's forensic team documented every single instance of bank forgery, fraudulent loan application, and fake legal affidavit executed by Derek and Vivian. Federal financial authorities and state prosecutors were alerted quietly, building a rock-solid case against Montgomery Health Logistics. Catherine told me to stay quiet, deliver my baby safely, and let Derek and Vivian expose their cruelty in full view of the law. Yesterday morning, I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy named Noah at Scottsdale Memorial Hospital. Derek barely spent 20 minutes at the hospital. He spent the entire time on his phone, muttering about financial stress before leaving me alone in the recovery room. Neither he nor Vivian brought flowers, offered congratulations, or showed a single shred of affection for my newborn son. This morning, the hospital discharged me. Derek arrived in his sports car looking tense and annoyed, barely speaking a word to me as he placed baby Noah's carrier into the back seat and drove us back to the Paradise Valley estate. When Derek pulled into the gravel driveway of the Paradise Valley mansion, I stepped out of the car holding tiny Noah wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Vivian was standing on the grand stone front porch, wearing a designer silk robe, flanked by 2 large cardboard boxes filled with my personal belongings. Before I could even reach the steps, Vivian kicked the top box down the stone stairs, sending my clothes, books, and personal papers scattering across the dusty gravel driveway. "That's as far as you go, Lisa," Vivian shouted, her voice dripping with cruel, unadulterated venom. "We're done taking care of a penniless leech. You've been nothing but a financial burden on my son since the day you walked into this house." I stood on the gravel holding my sleeping newborn, looking at her with absolute calm silence. "Vivian, I just gave birth yesterday. This is my baby's home." Derek stepped out of the sports car, crossing his arms over his chest, offering a cold, indifferent glare. "Listen to my mother, Lisa," Derek said coldly. "The marriage is over. I'm filing for sole custody of Noah on Monday, claiming you have no income and no place to live. Leave your keys on the hood and get off our property." Vivian smirked, leaning against the porch railing with supreme triumph. "Did you really think a nobody like you belonged in a family like ours? You have no money, no family, and no power. Now get off my driveway before I call the police for trespassing." I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't shed a single tear. I quietly adjusted baby Noah in my arms, looked up at Vivian, and said, "You shouldn't have done that, Vivian." Before Vivian could respond with another insult, the deep rumble of a heavy engine echoed down the private drive. A sleek, tinted black Lincoln Navigator SUV pulled smoothly into the driveway, blocking Derek's sports car, and came to a stop right in front of the porch. The rear door opened, and my mother, Catherine Webb, stepped out into the bright Arizona sunlight. She was wearing an elegant charcoal executive suit, her diamond ring catching the light, her face radiating pure, unshakable authority. Beside her stepped Nathaniel Blake, holding a heavy, sealed leather portfolio under his arm. Vivian's smug smile froze on her face. Her eyes widened in utter confusion as she recognized Catherine Webb, a woman whose face regularly appeared on regional business journals and real estate magazine covers. Catherine Webb? Vivian stammered, her voice high and breathless. What are you doing at my house?" Catherine didn't even acknowledge Vivian's question. She walked straight past Derek, stepping gently up to my side, placing a loving, protective arm around my shoulder, and looking down at her newborn grandson with tears of pride in her eyes. "You did wonderfully, Lisa," Catherine whispered softly to me, before turning her razor-sharp gaze towards Vivian and Derek. "To answer your question, Vivian," Catherine said, her voice echoing clearly across the driveway like a steel blade, "I am here because my daughter, Lisa Webb, invited me to oversee her official exit." Derek's jaw dropped. "Daughter? Lisa? Catherine Webb is your mother?" Nathaniel Blake stepped forward, unzipping the heavy leather portfolio and pulling out a legal stack of state and corporate documents. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery," Nathaniel Blake said, his tone razor-sharp and absolute. "My name is Nathaniel Blake, Senior Managing Counsel for Webb Capital Real Estate Trust." Nathaniel handed a legal notice directly to Derek. "First," Nathaniel stated, "as of 8 o'clock this morning, Webb Capital has officially terminated your commercial lease for this Paradise Valley property due to 3 consecutive months of severe financial default. You have exactly 2 hours to vacate these premises before county sheriff deputies enforce a formal eviction." Vivian let out a choked, horrific shriek, clutching her chest as she stumbled back against the porch wall. "Eviction? This is my house. You can't evict me." "This house belongs to my daughter's trust, Vivian," Catherine stated coldly. "You are trespassing on her land." Nathaniel pulled a second document from the folder, handing it to 2 uniformed officers who pulled up in a local police cruiser behind the SUV. "Second," Nathaniel continued, looking dead at Derek, "we have submitted certified forensic proof of bank forgery to the Arizona Attorney General's office. Mr. Montgomery, you fraudulently executed a $4.5 million loan using my client's forged signature. Warrants for your immediate arrest for felony wire fraud and grand larceny have just been issued." Derek went entirely white, his knees trembling violently as the 2 police officers stepped up the driveway, grabbing his arms and placing steel handcuffs around his wrists. "Lisa, please, talk to her." Derek sobbed hysterically, dropping to his knees on the gravel as the handcuffs clicked into place. "I was forced into it. My mother made me do it. I love you. Think of Noah." "I am thinking of Noah," I said softly, looking down at my crying ex-husband with complete, calm indifference, "which is why he will grow up miles away from a coward like you." Vivian collapsed onto the stone steps, weeping frantically, screaming at the officers as her son was loaded into the back of the police cruiser, while movers, hired by Nathaniel Blake, began packing her belongings into storage crates to clear the mansion. The legal and financial destruction of the Montgomery family was absolute and unyielding. Derek Montgomery was convicted of federal wire fraud, grand identity theft, and corporate forgery. He was sentenced to 7 years in a state penitentiary and ordered to pay full financial restitution. Montgomery Health Logistics declared complete bankruptcy, its commercial assets liquidated by court auction. Vivian Montgomery was stripped of her luxury lifestyle, her country club standing, and her home. Forced to face massive civil judgments for commercial lease fraud, she moved into a small, rented 1-bedroom apartment in an outer suburb, living off a minimal fixed pension while facing complete social isolation. I filed for an immediate annulment and was granted full, sole legal and physical custody of my son, Noah, with a permanent protective order barring the Montgomery family from ever approaching us. I stepped into my true destiny,
accepting the role of executive vice president at Webb Capital Real Estate Trust. Working alongside my mother, I managed our $500 million commercial portfolio, expanding our healthcare facility developments across 3 states. 2 years later, Noah and I live at a breathtaking, sunlit mountain estate in Paradise Valley, the very home where my independence was forged. Sitting on my wide stone balcony as the golden Arizona sunset illuminates the desert mountains, holding my healthy, laughing toddler in my arms, while my mother sits nearby enjoying an evening tea, I know with absolute clarity that real strength isn't about enduring abuse. It is about honoring your self-worth, keeping your power quiet, and letting the light of truth destroy those who tried to break you.
Educational lesson. This narrative demonstrates a critical principle regarding financial due diligence, leasehold leverage, and the psychological flaws of arrogant abusers. Predatory relatives often assume that quiet or modest behavior indicates vulnerability and lack of support. They use public humiliation and financial pressure to coerce victims into compliance, unaware that legal paper trails, such as property leases, loan guarantees, and corporate filings, operate strictly on verifiable evidence. When facing systemic domestic or financial abuse, gathering forensic documentation quietly and utilizing established legal frameworks is the most decisive strategy for securing safety and justice. Personal advice. If you are trapped in an abusive or manipulative family environment where your worth is degraded and your financial security is threatened, do not waste your energy arguing or seeking validation from your abusers. Maintain emotional composure, document every instance of coercion or legal misconduct, and reach out to trusted allies or legal professionals behind the scenes. Enforce your boundaries with uncompromising resolve. Protect your children, and remember that stepping into your own truth is the ultimate victory over those who attempted to diminish you.